Okay, Sarah, what is tip number 3, please?
So, tip number 3 is one that's quite close to my heart, I think, because it's, I think we all do it all the time. So tip number 3 is beware of the curse of knowledge. So lots of people know what the curse of knowledge is, but for those who don't, the curse of knowledge is that when you gain knowledge in an area, you've kind of built up your mental model, or what some people call a collection of schemas, which are kind of your networks of knowledge. So as you get more expert, you've kind of built those networks of knowledge, and you've streamlined your thinking on something. It's therefore very difficult for you to think like a novice again, because you've kind of built up this schema. And teachers are probably much better than most people at this, because they also have schemas about how to teach their subject, which has caused them to have to sort of think about how to break it down and things like that. But we can never really go back to being the novice learner. So we're always teaching in a way that overestimates what the learners in front of us are going to take from what we say. We're always thinking, we've been clear enough there. Surely they, I can assume they know that. I can see these things are quite implicit, but we are kind of always making those assumptions. And obviously, you can see what the downside of that would be. It would mean that we end up kind of pitching things too high, leaving gaps, and then our learners are kind of getting lost. Is it okay, Craig, if I tell you about the study that sort of linked to this? Because
I'd be disappointed if you didn't, Sarah. Go for it.
I really loved this study. So it was a study by Elizabeth Newton, and what she did was she got a group of people in pairs, and each pair had a tapper and a listener. And the tapper was told to pick a kind of well-known song like Happy Birthday, and they were going to tap the song for their listener partner, and they were going to see how many of those listener partners were able to guess correctly the song from the tapping. And what was really interesting was that they said to the tappers, they said, how many of your listeners do you think are actually going to get this right? And they predicted about 50%. In real life, it was only about 2.5% of people who got it right. So it's that idea that we've got this tune in our heads, and I like it as a metaphor. We've got this tune in our heads, we've got this knowledge that we know, and we're tapping it out. We're saying it to the class, and we're assuming that they're kind of keeping up with it. But actually, 2.5% of them, maybe not that low, but not that many are.
Wow. So I guess the obvious question is how do we overcome this curse of knowledge as teachers? Is it as simple as just improving our check for understanding?
So I think that's definitely part of it. Is there anything more important than a good check for understanding? I'm not sure, but that's definitely part of it. I think it comes in the planning stage as well, and I've been in wonderful planning meetings with departments where the way they think about what they're communicating and how they plan to communicate, and they share the examples that seem to work for their pupils with the rest of the department, and they share their concrete examples, they share their analogies, and they share those things that really kind of allow their learners to understand at the level that their learners are at the knowledge that they're trying to convey. So really good kind of sharing of good concrete examples, good analogies, and sometimes even listing out the knowledge that it takes to understand a particular concept can really be eye-opening, because then if you sit down, you force yourself to say, do they have these prerequisites? Do I know? How do I know?
Yeah.
Then you start to realise just how much they need to know in order to access what it is that you're saying.
Can I just ask you a bonus question, Sarah? I don't get to speak to many English teachers or former English teachers. I'm all in my maths bubble. Occasionally I let a science teacher in there, but it's mainly maths. What are some of your check for understanding techniques? What works well in English?
So I have to hold my hands up, Craig, and say I was a terrible English teacher when I was an English teacher. I now feel like if I went, I will one day go back into the classroom and hopefully be better. But it's a bit like your book, How I Wish I Taught Maths, How I Wish I Taught English. So I can't say that I was particularly good at it. I used to use whiteboards for like quick and easy things that I could see. There used to be a lot of like think, pair, share kind of stuff that I would do. I thought think, pair, share was particularly useful just after you had delivered some new material. And I now realise that the reason I was finding it useful was because of that idea of what we say hits the interface of the pupil's mind and changes. And I think what happens when you do think, pair, share is that you allow them that time to process what you've said and link to kind of what they already know, and you can go round and go, wow, that is not what I said.
Yes.
That is not what I said at all. Or, wow, okay, that's really landed. And I think it gives you that quite immediate check that they've sort of, it's kind of hit the right note, I suppose.
That's really nice. And one final thing on curse of knowledge. So what about this for a twist? So I didn't see this coming, right? So you've made the point, I think it's completely valid, that perhaps teachers, we are slightly better at avoiding the curse of knowledge than perhaps other non-teachers, because we've experienced and we've also, we think about how to teach things to novices. That's the essence of the job. But what about this for a twist, right? So I was in a school last week, and it was a school where they set in maths, and they also have parallel sets. So across year 8 to be split, you've got 2 top sets, 2 second sets, and so on and so forth, just because of timetabling issues. So I was working with a teacher of a bottom set year 8 on one side, but also the teacher of the equivalent bottom set on the other side, if that makes sense. One of the teachers was very experienced. I think she'd been teaching for maybe let's say 7 or 8 years, something like that. The other was an RQT in her first year. What was fascinating was that the experienced teacher, when she was planning a lesson, had much lower aspirations for where the kids were going to get to, because she was saying, well, they're a bottom set. So she's obviously taught lots of kids in the past, the bottom set, they're not going to get there, blah, blah, blah. So she'd set the bar fairly low. The RQT didn't have a flipping clue. So she's asking all these hard questions left, right and centre. And lo and behold, what happens? The kids made far more progress, if whatever we define progress as, but they were answering more complex questions in the RQT's lesson than in the experienced teacher's lesson. So I just wonder whether sometimes more experience as a teacher, obviously it's a good thing, but if it's sometimes we kind of don't realise that every class is different and also, and have these check for understanding things in there, there's a bit of a danger that kind of curse of knowledge might actually be, you know what I'm trying to say in that mumbled up way. I just thought it was a fascinating kind of scenario. I've never seen that before.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and it just goes to show the expectation seems to trump most of what we're saying here. And that knowledge is knowledge in different domains, like knowledge of what you think the pupils are able to achieve as well. I think that's a really important one with all of these kind of tips that we've got, is that in teaching is mad, isn't it? There's so much stuff going on. Everything is kind of intersecting. So whereas this kind of tip in isolation sounds good, what you've just said has kind of thrown that a little bit in a different direction, which is brilliant. I think expectations drives everything, really, doesn't it?
They certainly do.